Hello everybody, I'm Alyssa from Meditative Astrology. Today we're going to walk through the astrology of December 28th through January 3rd. We have a few things to talk about. We're going to have a focus on Mercury and the aspects that it makes before it changes signs. We have a full moon in the sign of Cancer, so we're going to get into all of that. Before we do, quick reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Then you won't miss these weekly videos, then you won't miss the live meditations that we have Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you join us this week, it'll be our last meditation for 2025. So yeah, follow along here. If you find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, then you'll see all other posts, updates, announcements, things like that. Once in a while, there's a change to the schedule for meditations. That's always announced live, but those will also be shared there, as well as the weekly intentions. Those come out later in the day on Fridays. So yeah, follow along on all the things, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, meditativeastrology.com is the hub for all of the things as well. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to this week. We start out on Sunday by following the moon around. We don't have any exact aspects for the first couple days here, so we're going to see the moon moving through the sign of Aries. It's going to make that square to Jupiter. And then if we go ahead and move forward into Monday here, we have no other planetary aspects. The moon will move from the sign of Aries into the sign of Taurus. So that Taurus moon is going to take us right into Tuesday, December 30th. This is where we have our first exact aspect of this week. Mercury has been moving through the sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter's sign. Jupiter's in the sign of Cancer right now, where our full moon is going to be. And it's been moving along, and now it's going to run into the square with Saturn. This square with Saturn can stop and slow down this Sagittarius Mercury in a way. So when you think about the sign of Sagittarius, again, Jupiter's fire sign, there's broad perspectives, right? There's lots of experiences and lots of information and knowledge and understandings that we want to bring in when we're in this space. So maybe Mercury has been expanding its view. Maybe it's been bringing in different pieces of information, different learning from different places, and bringing, maybe even coming up with some ideologies and things like that it's been working through. Now it comes into the square with Saturn from Pisces, which is Jupiter's other sign. And now we come to this space where we've been asking maybe the bigger questions from the sign of Sagittarius, but we're given this moment to stop. We're given this moment to stop and pause. So when I think about Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius expanding its views, expanding its experiences, and wanting to bring in more to be able to understand. But when it brings in more, sometimes it's a little superficial level, right? Wanting to understand the big picture versus the opposite side of the wheel, which is Gemini, that maybe we're looking at the smaller little details here. So the mind can spin into a state of grandiosity in the sign of Sagittarius in different ways, looking at the summary rather than the details, right? Kind of like that. So now with coming into the square with Saturn, maybe we are stopped here to question through the square. The squares can bring challenges or bring they're a scratchy aspect that sometimes make us uncomfortable enough just to move a little bit, right? They challenge us to do things different. It's a place that we can grow from. But maybe we are stopped here to question the deeper connections and the deeper meanings behind the things that we've been bringing in, right? The ideologies and the morals and the ethics maybe that we've been exploring, or the experiences that we've been having and what those have been teaching us, what we've learned from them and what we've taken away from them. The square is coming from Saturn in the sign of Pisces, Jupiter's water sign. So there's much more of an emotional connection here. So maybe within this focused yet broadening mindset that you can get with Mercury and Saturn coming together in any sort of aspect. But maybe having that aspect across these signs is asking us to think about how we relate emotionally to the things that we've been experiencing, right? To the ideas, to the ideologies, and to the really the knowledge and the insights that have been coming towards us. How do we emotionally relate to those experiences and to the beliefs that we have at hand, or the ones that are presenting themselves to us? Maybe we're given a moment to slow down and to feel into the meaning, right? Now, the square between Mercury and Saturn can feel limiting. It can feel like we're not able to express ourselves mentally or verbally, or feel like, you know, there's something that is maybe suppressing suppressing that fire within us in a way, or maybe it's even our own emotions that can be suppressing our own Sagittarian energy within us here. These are all things that we could see coming through here in the beginning of the week. Slowing Mercury down. Mercury has just a few more days in the sign of excuse me, the sign of Sagittarius before it moves into the sign of Capricorn. So then if we go ahead and move forward into Wednesday, no exact aspects here. So again, we're following the moon around. And then if we come forward into Thursday, January 1st, this is where we're going to have the square between Mercury and Neptune. Let me go ahead and put the chart up here for just a moment so you can see where these squares are coming through. So in this chart, you can find Mercury in the 10th house in the sign of Sagittarius. This chart is actually set for Sunday. So we're going to go ahead and roll it forward a couple days here. And you'll see where Mercury comes into the square with Saturn here on Tuesday. And then if we go ahead and move it forward a couple more days here, we'll get Mercury at the 29th degree of Sagittarius squaring Neptune at the 29th degree of Pisces. I've mentioned in the last couple weeks that these aspects that we're getting to Neptune are the last of the ones that we're going to see with Neptune in the sign of Pisces. The conjunctions that these planets are going to make are going to be once Neptune moves into the sign of Aries. So these are some of these last interactions that we have in this space. And then if you go ahead and move forward one more day, we're going to talk about Mercury moving into the sign of Capricorn. But backing up here to Mercury coming into the square with Neptune, thinking about this simultaneously as a process, Mercury interacting with Saturn and then Mercury interacting with Neptune. It's like there's a contraction before there's an expansion, right? Or you could look at this expansion happening after the contraction or after the squeeze that could have happened with Saturn slowing Mercury down here. So when we start to expand after the contraction, you know, maybe this is a point of release. Maybe the Saturn square squeezed our mind and our thoughts and the way we speak and the way we process things just enough to allow us to release old beliefs, release limiting beliefs or limiting mindsets, thinking about those difficult things that you can get with Mercury and the square to Saturn. Maybe the square to Neptune can release that. Neptune dissolves or dissipates things, right? We're talking about Jupiter signs here, so we can definitely be talking about beliefs for sure, and even the different schools of thought and the beliefs that we subscribe to, different systems that we find ourselves underneath as well. Connecting to otherworldly energies here, Mercury being the planet of our mind, thoughts, communications, and coming into contact with Neptune in Jupiter's sign here in the sign of Pisces, I could see connections to otherworldly energies. So looking into connecting with our guides, looking into connecting with our ancestors, or you know, other worldly messages coming through here, messages from the in-between, symbols, things from the other side or otherworldly understandings. Maybe you know, this is one of those moments where it could feel like the veil's a little bit thin for some of us here. So those messages coming through, those messages can come through in emotional waves. Those messages can come through in subtle symbols that we see, or maybe something that you see and then you blink your eyes and then all of a sudden it's not there. That could be a very Neptunian type thing. Wondering about feeling distant or feeling disconnected in some sort of way, because Neptune and Pisces can have a longing, right? It has a feeling of something that it desires or something that it wants, maybe a dream that may or may not have been realized through the process of Neptune moving through the sign of Pisces, which we've had for the better half since 2011 here. So, you know, maybe since this is, both planets are at the anaretic degree and it's ending this last little stint, not little stint, a long stint of Neptune in the sign of Pisces, maybe we're really feeling some sort of pull towards like these are the final moments to have something, right? So there's that longing that comes, something that's maybe slowly been building. Maybe there's some sort of culmination. I could see that for some of us, certainly, for sure. So that dream that may or may not have been realized throughout this period of time, do you feel pulled to reflect on that? Square between Mercury, the mental realm, right, and Neptune, reflecting on how you've been inspired, thinking about the Pisces house within your chart and what planets are there, and how that plays out within your life. Just after Mercury moves through that square to Neptune, within hours, it's going to go ahead and ingress into the sign of Capricorn. And when it does, it's going to add to the lineup of planets that we have in the sign of Capricorn. So if you look here, once Mercury moves in, we have Mercury, we have Sun, we have Venus, and we have Mars moving in here. Mercury moving into this space is our mental capacity moving into the participation of a process for for Mars and for Venus. Look how close those two planets are to the sun here. They're going to travel within a couple degrees for a few days, and both talking too much about Mercury. Both Mars and Venus are going to have their Cazimi moments where they make a conjunction with the sun next week. So Mercury is coming into a place where it's going to participate in this process, although it won't have its own personal Cazimi. That's going to happen in the sign of Aquarius towards the end of January, once Mercury moves out of the sign of Capricorn. As Mercury moves into that sign of Capricorn, we get that Saturnian mind, right? Capricorn is the earth domicile of Saturn. It's ruled by Saturn, right? But it's an earth sign. It's a feminine sign. So we can look to the ruler of that sign and see where it's at and maybe the interaction that's going on there. So we mentioned that Saturn is in the sign of Pisces, which is ruling Mercury in the sign of Capricorn. So you have that Saturnian mind, but with the ruler being in the sign of Pisces, it brings in this emotional, maybe intuitive connection, which really makes me think about the image of the sea goat that we associate with Capricorn, right? The sea goat and the sign of Capricorn is half earth, but it's also half water animal, right? So you have of the land and of the sea at the same time. It's practical, and it's predictable, and it's immovable, but at the same time, it's mystical, and there's mysteries within it that we can't quite see below the surface unless you delve into it. So there is this magical component of the sign of Capricorn. But sometimes we forget about that part and we think more about the earthly part. This also makes me think about how we need to remember that before the outer planets were discovered, Saturn was the farthest most out of the traditional planets, and it still is when you look at the traditional planets, right? So Saturn has this sitting on the boundary connotation within it, which is where we get the foundations and we get the boundaries and the frameworks and the structures, right? But it also sits on that edge of what can be seen and what is within reach and what is on the other side of that, right? So there can be that, I'm thinking about this intuitive level with Mercury being in Capricorn and Saturn sign, with Saturn being in the sign of Pisces. Maybe there's a way where we can reach beyond that boundary, whatever that means for you, during this time here. So there might be a little bit extra magical portion than what we're thinking about. Yes, Mercury in the sign of Capricorn is going to be goal-oriented. Yes, it is strategic. Yes, it is building towards something. Yes, it is climbing a mountain, and it is working towards its goals. And it can be very, I was going to say narrow-minded, but more like laser-focused, right, in the sign of Capricorn here. But most importantly, really just adding to that pile up of planets that we have in the sign of Capricorn, and really just emphasizing that Capricorn area in our chart, which this month is really getting a big reset here as we move into the beginning of January here. So that's what we have going on Thursday. So we leave with Mercury moving into the sign of Capricorn. We're going to go ahead and move forward into Friday. Oops, let me go ahead and put the camera back up here. So that's Thursday. Yep. Move forward into Friday. No major aspects here except for the lunar aspects again. If we go ahead and move forward into Saturday, January 3rd, we are now in 2026. We get our first lunation of the year, which is a full moon. We have the full moon in the sign of Cancer coming through. Saturday, it comes through about 5:02 a.m. Eastern time, so you'll have to translate that to your own time zone if you're someplace other than where I am at. The full moon in the sign of Cancer. Within its own right, when it comes through in the sign of Capricorn, in this period of time where, especially when we have all these personal planets here at the same time, that working the grind, nose to the paper, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, that practical, immovable, starting cardinal sign of creation energy can really be kind of hard on some of us, right? It can really feel like we are grinding so hard that like maybe it's not practical or something like that. I think about how January 1st is within Capricorn season, and people make lots of resolutions and like things that they're going to do, and they start really, really ambitious with the year, right? We have lots of goals and lots of things that we're going to do and things that we start to initiate right away. And I'm going to start off the year with this or whatever. And I'm not I think that's absolutely great, absolutely wonderful, but it just illustrates that motivation that we have in the sign of Capricorn, right? That Saturnian, it's time to climb the mountain, put your head down, go forward, do the work that needs to be done. Sign of Cancer. The sign of Cancer is a little bit more sweet within its own right. It's the place of the moon. It's the place of the mother. It's the place where we look for a safe space and nurturing and emotional connection within the family ties and memory and our ancestry and those intimate emotional connections that we have. So it's always a bit of a sweet moment that can come through in the sign within Capricorn season to have the full moon in the sign of Cancer. So when we think about all of this going on in the sign of Capricorn, essentially Sun, Mars, and Venus are all in opposition. If I go ahead and put the chart up here, let me go ahead and roll this forward, and then we're gonna back it up to about 5 a.m. here. Let me just real quick. Okay, yep. So 13 degrees of Cancer, you can see the moon. 13 degrees of Capricorn, you can see the sun. There's a lot of Capricorn energy going on. That full moon is applying to Jupiter. It's in opposition to obviously the sun, but also Mercury and Venus and Mars. And there is a lot of initiatory, let's restart, let's have that beginning of the year ambition, we're going to set all the resolutions, and we're going to start all the new habits. Like that energy is really built into the beginning of this year here, right? At the same time, the full moon is coming through in the sign of Cancer. It's applying to Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. If we're building a space, if we're building something in the sign of Capricorn, something physical, something tangible, then we need to build that space for growth to happen, right? For growth to take place. Like there needs to be something there needs to be a purpose. There needs to be a reason. There needs to be something that we are building this for, right? If we're actually building the thing. So I'm thinking about like, if you physically build a space, like if you build a house, right? What is the point of building the house if you don't have a family to make it a home, right? Kind of like that. The space that you are building, what is the growth that it's for? This might be a questioning moment for that. There may be an interplay of our memory body and our connection with others, maybe within the past and the future. Saturn can be known as Father Time, and Jupiter in Cancer is the Great Mother, right? So yes, we're building structures. We're building structures that are going to last an eternity. They're going to stand the test of time. But is it worth it? What is the emotional connection? Can we feel into what we are building? Or does it feel sterile? Does it feel like there's something missing? Does it feel like there's an emotional connection that's missing, right? Is there something that's within us? Is there a person? Is there a group that could be missing as well? Within, we're looking at these Jupiterian things, We're looking at them within ourselves as well as our personal interactions within the archetypes that we are looking at here. So if we're looking at Father Time and the Great Mother, we're looking at those archetypes within ourselves as well as within others. And, you know, it could be the literal father, mother, and it could be otherwise. It could be looking for those structural forms. It could be looking for the nurturing in the environment that we find ourselves in, and really trying to marry the two of those, right? The practical, structural part and the emotional, caring, safety part, right? We really want to create a safe space in the sign of Cancer. Both of these signs are cardinal signs, and we have the impending Kazimis. So creating something new within a fulfillment of something that has already been started or something that has been initiated feels very true here. Because these are cardinal signs, they like to initiate, they like to start things, and there's an extra oomph of starting and initiating with the vitality reset that Venus and Mars are about to go through here. So you definitely have this initiating, but it's a full moon, right? The full moon is the culmination of the lunar cycle. It's in the sign of Cancer, where we look at things that deal with history, right? Our memory body, our experiences, our emotional conditionings, the subconscious mind, and everything that it has accumulated. That all comes from things that we have brought in and accumulated, maybe even a little bit like a sponge, right? Or just through our experiences. We accumulate as we move through this world, right? We accumulate thoughts, feelings, emotions, connections, bonds, things like that. All of these things could be coming into play during the full moon here. So really just working hard to build something that is sweet, tender, and nurturing is also a possibility here. So it's balancing. It's balancing the hard work and the emotional connection. Maybe it's balancing rest and self-care and climbing up that mountain. With Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, what mountain has Jupiter and Cancer uncovered for you, right? Is there a mountain that is there for you to climb now? Because Jupiter and Cancer can be very caring and very nurturing and very guiding, but it can also bring a lot of insight and a lot of knowledge about things that are sensitive areas, right? So we start talking about our family history. We start talking about family karma. We start talking about our own personal karma and our past history and our memory body and our subconscious. All of that can just be either really weighty, or it can just feel like it takes a lot to process and actually get down to that space. It's a sensitive space. So what mountain has Jupiter uncovered for you, if it has one? Because with the full moon in the sign of Cancer and all this going on in opposition to it in the sign of Capricorn, you may feel like you have the practical ambition and motivation to climb that mountain, even if it's an emotional and a hard one, right? If it's been absolutely great and absolutely good, then you keep scaling that mountain either way, right? Usually it's a mixed bag. Usually it's a little bit of a combination of those. But Cancerian lessons probably have been learned in some sort of way with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. So looking at the topics of Cancer, which are a lot of the lunar things that we just talked about, as well as the topics of the house where Cancer falls within your own chart here. So these lessons maybe have been learned, or at the very least, they've been revealed. So what path will you go down as a result of it? That is a question that we can ask ourselves within this full moon, because we're digging into the space of those sensitive areas. Jupiter and Cancer alone right there can have some sensitivity within a sensitive space. And you know, those grand water trines that we talked about, I've mentioned repeatedly that for a lot of us, it's not just a one and done thing, right? For some of us, especially those of us that it hits certain parts of our chart, or we are water dominant or something like that, it might have opened up some floodgates of things that really just need to be handled. And you know, there needs to be some restoration that needs to take place. So this may really give you, this full moon here may give you that motivation and feel like, okay, I can stand up on my own 2 feet and I can handle whatever is in front of us. As well as, you know, what is the purpose to what I'm building here? You know, am I building a house so it can be a home, or am I building a house just to say I built a structure and then it sits vacant and empty, and like, you know, then it starts to rot, starts to fall away because nobody's maintaining it, right? Kind of like that. So we have a mercurial process this week. Mercury moves through a constriction and then an expansion before it moves into the sign of Capricorn. And then just after that, we get the full moon in the sign of Cancer, which is interacting with Capricorn because that's where the sun is at here, right? So there can be a lot of messages. There can be a lot going on in the mental realm here this week. The mental and the emotional realm. Trying to marry that with the practical realm. Not always the easiest, right? That is what we have going on for the very end of December and the beginning of January. So I hope everybody has had a wonderful holiday season, no matter how that hits you, no matter what you do or do not celebrate. And if you've made it all the way through this video, let me know. Let me know what's been going on for you. Mention something in the comments. You know, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and live meditation Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're watching this shortly after it's released, then you have time to catch us on Sunday, December 28th, the day that this video starts. Yeah, so thank you for walking through this week astrologically with me. And yeah, happy full moon, happy days. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Take care and see you next time. Bye, everybody.